Well, welcome back, folks. I thought I would take this opportunity while I'm here to ask some questions of my host to find out what type of products he uses in the workshop to attain certain finishes, whether we be using the blast cabinet, whether we be using the tumbler, whether we be using just hand tools to polish or clean parts. I would like to know we're going to start with your most aggressive medium, the blast cabinet. What type of medium do you use, and for what reasons do you use this type of medium?
Well, in the blast cabinet, I typically use either glass beads, which is just what it sounds like. It's very fine or small glass beads, or black diamond are my most commonly used media. I also have zinc oxide I keep around, but I find that for soft metals, alloys,
yes,
aluminums, or any other brass, any other soft material, I will use glass beads almost exclusively. It gives a nice matte finish, and it typically doesn't beat up the substrate or the product itself, the material itself, too much. However, if I'm going to be doing steel, or I'm trying to do some rust removal or finish reclamation, I will switch over to a black diamond, which is actually crushed coal slag.
Okay.
And it's called black diamond because it's black. I mean, it's kind of dusty, and it looks like fine particles of crushed coal. Great product for rapid material removal, like on steel. I would not use black diamond, or that's a brand name, by the way. Black diamond, I think, is a trade name.
Okay.
I wouldn't use crushed coal slag on soft metals like alloys or aluminums. Just, I wouldn't. But steel is great. Aluminum oxide, which typically tends to be brown, is also a great media to use for rust removal on steel,
okay,
iron, harder metals. Again, I wouldn't typically use that on softer materials or alloys. My cabinet is set up, and I have done, I think, a couple of videos, at least one on the setup, the basic setup for my blast cabinet. I can very quickly change my cabinet over. I can drain it and switch over from one media to the other in 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
I usually or typically will do that outside. I push the cabinet outside onto the pad in front of the shop. It has wheels under it. I put wheels under it intentionally so I could do it that way. The reason being is changing media is very dusty.
Yes.
And I don't want all that dust swirling around in my shop. So I will push the cabinet outside, close the garage door, drain it. I'll take a blowgun, connect to the air compressor, blow it out really quick, make sure it's blowing down into a plastic, like a 5-gallon pail. Recap the bottom drain, put the new media in, and wheel back into the shop. It's not a real problem even in the winter time, because I will just wait till, I'm not going to do it in a blizzard or a snowstorm here, but even if the weather is cold, it doesn't make any difference to quickly open the garage door, push it out, do the changeover, bring it back in, close the door, and 10-15 minutes later it's complete. So I can change over pretty quickly. Most of the time I leave glass beads in it, because most of the time when I'm using the media blast cabinet, I'm doing aluminums, I'm doing side covers, I'm doing some kind of an alloy based,
Okay.
most of the time. So that's probably 60-70% of the time I use glass beads, and then I'll change it back and forth as necessary. But the two most common that I use are glass beads and crushed coal slag, otherwise known as black diamond.
Now, are there more than one grit level in the glass beads? Is there different levels of grit, or is it different aggregate size, or is it just one?
No, there is in pretty much all of these materials we talked about already. You can get different grit sizes. Where I buy my media at a local Tractor Supply, they carry only one grade, and I think it's an 80 grit, I want to say, for the glass beads. Yeah, 80 grit, I guess would be the right term. Though you can, if you look online, you can typically find a different grade or grit,
yes,
finer to coarser. The 80 works fine for me.
Is that sort of a mid-grade?
Yeah, I think it's a mid-grade. It's a medium size. It works fine for me.
Okay.
If, by the way, if you're using your media too long, especially like a glass bead, which tends to be a softer material,
yes,
believe it or not, you'll turn it to a powder. So if it'll literally disintegrate, and you end up like you're trying to blast with flour, baking flour. That's one of the reasons I don't use glass beads on steel. It's not the best media to remove heavy rust from steel. It will do it eventually, but what you'll do is you'll destroy your media in the process, turn it into powder, and it's useless, and you'll end up throwing it away and buying a new bag of it. So I typically use 80. Black Diamond or the crushed coal slag, I believe it's either 60 or 80 grit. Again, that's fairly coarse, and that is what my local supplier carries. So I don't shop around looking for different grits. I use whatever base is on the shelf, and I've always been happy with that.
Okay. Now moving on, what type of a product do you use in your ultrasonic cleaner?
Sure.
There's many different solutions out there on the internet, and what works well for you?
Sure. When I use an ultrasonic cleaner, it's typically to clean carburetor bodies. That's probably 99% of why I use an ultrasonic cleaner. And what I have done, and if you go out on the internet and do searches, you'll find all kinds of concoctions, and you can even buy commercially made solutions, which I have never tried. And I've tried them all. And you can use things like Simple Green, you can use products such as Pine Sol, and you'll see all these variations mixed together. And the only thing you have to keep in mind is carburetor bodies is used on Japanese motorcycles, and most equipment are an alloy, some people call it a pot metal, or a zinc-based component, which is quite a soft material. And if you use something that's too strong in the alkaline side of the chemical scale, you will affect the quality of the finish of the item. You will actually erode it away.
Right.
So some of those chemicals, for instance, I believe, and I'm not up on my organic chemistry exactly these days, but anything's too alkaline, like I would say Simple Green, probably, for instance. Another product that I use actually frequently in the shop would be Greased Lightning, which is a grease and oil remover. Great products, by the way, but they tend to be on the alkaline side, and they're very hard on zinc and alloy, zinc type alloys or pot metals. So you're going to be real careful if you're going to use that kind of a chemical in a ultrasonic cleaner to clean the carburetor. So I typically don't use, I've tried them, Pine Sol, Simple Green, I've tried them all. But what I found works for me is I use a solution of a non-acidic car wheel cleaner that's safe on alloy wheels.
Okay.
And that last part is critical.
Yes.
It has to be labeled as safe to use on alloy wheels. That is aluminum or aluminum alloy. Because if not, it's probably going to be too alkaline and is going to affect your carburetor bodies.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily have a brand name that I use. I use a lot of McGuire's products, but in terms of the solution I currently have, which I have used the same container solution for years, I will go down and look them over in the automobile supply stores,
yes.
right? And you will find, all kinds of these components, right? The chemicals are all over. And I will read each bottle, and I will look for something that's safe on alloy wheels. Okay. I'll buy that usually in a 1/4 liter bottle, and I will bring it home, and I will mix it usually 50-50 with a distilled water.
Okay.
That's it. It's as simple as that. 50-50 distilled water, 50% alloy safe wheel cleaner. Again, I keep saying alloy safe.
Yes.
Some of them are very aggressive. Some of them have a lot of acid in them.
Yes.
Some of them, go on the alkaline side. I mix that 50-50, use that in my over and over, and I save the solution, keep it in a plastic jug up on the shelf, and I use that over and over in my ultrasonic cleaner. And I do use heat. I find if you use heat, because mine does, most of them have a heat setting.
Yes.
Mine does. I actually will cycle my unit till the water gets hot.
Yes.
Before I start the process. Okay. Then I'll immerse and I disassemble the carburetors as far as I can. I will get them as far disassembled as humanly possible. I always try to get the pilot jets out, the main jets out, the emulsion tube. I make a lot of effort, and I don't know if I've ever ran into a carburetor I couldn't get apart with the right application of time and effort.
Yes.
Right? It might take some time, it might take some heat to apply to the body, and I break it all down into its component parts, and into the bath it goes in the ultrasonic cleaner using that 50-50 mix I just talked about. And I will sometimes, depending on the carburetor and what it looks like, the contamination, because you're trying to get rid of contamination, obviously,
yes.
the old fuels and that kind of thing. I might run them an hour or two, total, cycle after cycle. Because most of them have a timer, and they'll run for 3 minutes or something, and then I'll reposition the carbs in the basket, hit it again, go on and do something else, and it'll time out in 3 minutes or so, and keep going. And literally, I could go an hour or two until I'm satisfied. And then you rinse them good. Sometimes I will take the cleaner out of the ultrasonic cleaner, the solution.
Yes.
And I will rinse it out and put fresh distilled water, just distilled water in there, and then
Okay.
I will rinse them essentially and run them through 2 or 3 cycles of the ultrasonic cleaner
Yes.
with just fresh distilled water to rinse them, and then they're done.
Okay. Now, just briefly, what are some of the pitfalls if you use the wrong product, and are you able to counteract that to correct the situation?
Well, if you use something that's again, I think it's on the alkaline side, not the acidic side. So forgive me if I got that reversed, but I think I'm right. If you use something too alkaline on a carburetor body, you literally will erode it away and damage it.
Okay.
You literally will damage the material, the alloy itself.
Yes.
You'll turn it black or dark.
Yes.
Very hard to scrub that back out.
Okay.
And you'll literally start darkening on you. And if you've ever seen carburetors that are very dark in color that someone has processed, they probably use something like, I'm guessing, Pine Sol, and it's made them dark, and to get it back to an OEM look is challenging. Not that it couldn't be done, it can't be done, but it's challenging.
Yeah.
So you'll darken typically the carburetor body. It won't look original, if that's important to you. It is to most of us, but
Yes.
if it's not, then you can let it go. But you can literally damage the material. I mean, you can damage the structure of the
Yes.
body. So that's one of the biggest risks. Can you recover that? Sure. You can polish it out. It'll never look the same. I will tell you, you'll never get it to look the same, unless perhaps you took it to one of these modern vapor blasters, which I've never used. That there's an outfit, 35, 40 miles from me that does vapor blasting. I've never used it. Now, could you take a carburetor body that had been damaged and turn dark? Well, if it's damaged, you're not going to reverse the damage. But if it's just a finish look or the appearance aesthetic, you might be able to get a vapor blast to recover the finish and the look. Maybe. I've never done it, so I can't really.
Okay.
Either way, I can't really respond to that.
Yes.
But if you use something on the opposite end of the chemical scale, or the acidic or alkaline scale, I don't think it's just going to clean as well.
Okay.
Frankly. For instance, I use a lot of Grease Lightning, which I've talked about, which is very alkaline. It will turn alloys black or darken them.
Yes.
And once it's damaged, it's kind of damaged. However, it does a great job of cleaning things that are oil and grease based.
Okay.
So alkaline-based cleaners could do a great job on things like grease, oils, that kind of crud that you accumulate on parts. Acidic-based cleaners, more on the opposite end of the chemical scale, will do a great job on things like water deposits, minerals. That
Yes,
you get
yes.
water in a carburetor body, and it'll tend to harden into minerals in the bottom. So acidic cleaners will tend to do a better job on things like that.
Okay.
So I find using that alloy wheel cleaner, alloy safe wheel cleaner, seems to be with water. Seems to be the best for me.
Yes. Now, moving on. How about hand polishing? Do you do much hand polishing? And if you do, what type of a product do you use, and for what reason?
Well, I have to confess, I'm not a real fan of hand polishing. It's not, it's right up there with doing wheels and tires on motorcycles, and it's kind of up there with swing arms, which, swing arms we talked about in another video. I don't like doing swing arm bushings much easier either. But in terms of hand polishing, I have some examples here of things that I typically use. I'm not necessarily endorsing these products. I'm not receiving any money from these folks for these products, but these are items that I typically use for polishing if I need to, and they've worked well for me over the years. So if I was trying to clean some metal,
Yes.
I'm trying to brighten it up a little bit. It was dirty. Never Dull, ever popular, Never Dull. All of these chemicals, by the way, the material is available at any auto supply store,
Yes.
pretty much. But Never Dull comes in the form of a what you call that, like a wool almost. You can see it there.
Yeah, it's like a cotton wadding.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's impregnated with a chemical. It smells a lot like a oil-based or a petroleum-based solution. And you just rip, the idea is you rip off a piece of that wadding and you scrub away, right?
Okay.
And it does a good job. In spite of what it might say on the can, if you got something that's very, very damaged, chrome plate is
Yes.
damaged, it will not restore chrome, because once the chrome is damaged from rust from underneath or pitting,
Yes.
you might get rid of the rust, but you're not restoring the chrome because chrome's gone.
Yes.
And it might look okay for a while, but once the chrome is damaged, you're out of luck.
Yes.
But it might make it look better. But
It'll take the staining away.
yeah, it will, absolutely, and get any surface contamination.
Yes.
So never dull for metal if you want to polish it up and remove soils like from your hands, WD-40, that kind of thing is great. If I want to brighten up a finish, such as these parts that we've worked on recently with Pete, is this Mother's mag and aluminum polish is a great product also. I don't use a lot of it. It's a paste form. Again, you use a clean, like I like to use cotton for this kind of thing, a clean cotton. I have cotton rags in the shop. I don't typically use paper towel for any of these
Yes.
products, by the way. I wouldn't typically use paper towel. I'd use a clean, washed cotton, usually white rag, like an old t-shirt that
Okay.
is washed and is
Right.
good and soft and supple.
Yeah, not necessarily a towel or anything like that.
You could
T-shirt
use
is
you could
better.
use a towel. I mean, if it's, yeah, sure, you could use a t-shirt or a towel. I find anything that's synthetic based, like polyesters or nylon clothing, doesn't work as well as cotton.
Okay.
It just doesn't. It doesn't absorb well because
Yes.
it's designed not to. I mean, that's the whole point behind synthetic fabrics, is they're stain resistant.
Yes.
Well, think about that. What are you trying to do? You're trying to absorb contaminants into the fabric so you can get rid of it. So I like to use cotton for
Yes.
that reason. So a clean cotton, again, you could use a clean cotton towel. I use old t-shirts typically for this. This is used usually, this mag and aluminum polish would be to, after I perhaps used this to do the rough cleaning, then I will use this to do the final brightening up,
Okay.
like a zinc plated part or something like that. If I'm working on plastics, pretty much my go-to, and again, this is a Meguiar's product. I'm not necessarily endorsing Meguiar's. This is their Plastic X clear plastic cleaner and polish. This is really, I think, was designed automotive field to restore headlight.
Okay, yes.
The covers of the
Yes.
modern cars have a clear plastic. You know,
Yes.
your headlight isn't right there; it's behind some kind of a fascia that's clear plastic. So you get, yellowing and aging of those headlight covers. I think that's what this is made for. It works great though to take out minor scratches in plastic, even color plastic.
So such as on a tail light lens or
Exactly.
a turn signal
Yeah,
lens,
as
something
long as
like
it's
that?
minor.
Yes.
This will not remove deep gouges. It will not remove deep scratches. So if you've got something that your fingernail might catch in, you can polish it till the cows come home, and you might get most of it up. But what you're going to end up doing is creating soft edges to the divot.
Yes.
Right. So you'll round it and smooth it off, so it won't be so sharp. You probably won't eliminate it unless you're going
Right.
to spend a week at it, because you're going to have to erode all that plastic to to eliminate it. Fine scratches, fine surface scratches, clear plastic, painted parts,
Yes.
molded in parts like you allude to, like the red taillight lens, works great. This is my go-to for plastic polishing. Again, minor plastic polishing. If it's severely damaged, even this one.
Okay. Now, is this done by hand, or would you use a buffer, or?
Sure. Well, you can. I've got a little buffing set up. I've got different wheels. I've got sewn cotton, and I have loose and fluffies, and I got all the different nomenclatured wheels. Most of the time, I do it by hand.
Yes.
I mean, you could use something like this on a clean. You don't want to mix media on your polishing wheels.
Right.
That's a big no-no.
Yes.
So once you commit a wheel to a product like this, you better label it, set the wheel aside.
Yes.
Mixing medias doesn't work. You can do it, and I have, but generally speaking, I hand polish most of the time,
Okay.
because what I'm working on is small parts.
Yes.
I'm working on a little part of a taillight lens, like you
Yes.
talked about, and I'm just not going to screw around. Setting up the polishing wheel to take a little fine scratch
Right,
out.
right.
Usually, I'll polish by hand at the bench.
Okay.
Again, using a clean cotton cloth.
Yes.
If I'm working on one of my restoration projects in particular, if it develops, you know, heaven forbid, but it happens, a little scratch, most of those bikes are clear coated,
Yes.
even though in some cases that wasn't original. You develop a little light surface scratch in your clear coat. Again, light is the operative word, light scratch. If it's through the clear into the paint below, there's nothing that's going to save that. I don't care, by the way, I would argue with anybody that believes they have a product that will recover permanently a severely damaged clear coat. It might fill it, it might make it look good for a while, but you wash that bike, you wax it again somewhere down the road, and you're right back where you started from. That's my experience.
Yes.
But light scratches in a clear coat, I like, again, this is Meguiar's product. Again, there's a theme here only because I've had good luck with Meguiar's.
Yes.
This is a Scratch X 2.0. This is fairly old. They might be up to 3.0 by now for all I know. Works wonderfully with, again, a clean, soft, fresh piece of cotton cloth.
Yes.
Quite often I'll use microfiber now when I'm getting into like finishes. I do have some microfiber cloths and towels that I keep clean, and they're covered and they're sealed away in a plastic bin. You can use cotton. Microfiber though would probably be what I would use on a good finish that has clear coat on it. And again, this will do the taking out the very minor things, but if you're through the clear into the paint, good luck.
Yes.
I don't care what anybody says. My experience has taught me over the years that you're not going to salvage that permanently. You might make it look better, but you're not going to salvage it permanently. So that would be my go-to for scratch removal. In terms of waxing of my bikes, you know, I'm not a detail freak. You know, I don't. Again, detailing of a motorcycle is kind of up there with doing wheels and polishing. For me, I just don't get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I know people that do. They really enjoy it, and that's where they get a lot of satisfaction. That's just not for me. But I do it when I have to. So usually, I got a liquid paste, you know, not dissimilar from, you know, these products here. In fact, I got it up on the shelf. Again, it's Meguiar's liquid, and I do a couple coats of wax on the bikes when they're first complete for the restoration.
Yes.
I do 2 or 3 coats, and by hand, of course. I don't get out the wheel on a little motorcycle tank. I don't bother with all that. I do it by hand.
Yes.
And call it good.
Yes.
I'm not an over polisher. It's just not kind of my thing.
Okay.